Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 News. McLaren, the big story of the weekend with an incredible result for both Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri in qualifying and the race at Silverstone. But Mercedes again see another customer team, this time McLaren, outperforming them this time 2 weekends in a row. Mercedes, Lewis Hamilton, Toto Wolff not happy and disappointed with their upgrades this weekend that didn't produce the desired results, but now say they know exactly the direction they need to go, having seen what McLaren have done with the massive progress they've made in recent races by taking some serious inspiration from the Red Bull. Very much intrigued to hear your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. Here's the Max Verstappen podcast episodes. I don't know what we're on, episode 9 or something now of the season. And these week's guests were, of course, Lando Norris and Lewis Hamilton. Now, it could well have been Oscar Piastri here if not for that late safety car. The first time, I believe, this century that we have had two Brits on the podium at Silverstone. Hamilton's been there a lot. But Lando Norris, what a story for McLaren, honestly. And this is, I mean, it's great for McLaren and for British motorsport the day yesterday, but it's very interesting for Mercedes because getting outperformed by Aston at the start of the season was embarrassing enough, and now McLaren have come from nowhere to be faster than Mercedes the last 2 weekends. Just a quick rundown of the race. Of course, Verstappen won. Norris did lead though a few laps, and the McLaren looked quick all weekends. In qualifying, they had an incredible 2-3 result. Perez had another stinker, was out in Q1 again, but yeah, Verstappen ends up winning the race. Again, we know that the Red Bull, it has tyre warm-up issues, and the starts have never, even Verstappen's starts generally have never been that good, probably the weakest part of his overall package. So Norris takes the lead for a few laps. Verstappen knew that he was going to get through eventually, and that's the trade-off with the Red Bull. It warms up its tyres slowly, but it also means that it preserves its tyres incredibly well, and after like 2 or 3 laps, the pace is just immense. Verstappen drove off, but Norris did well. He stuck with him for a few laps, which I thought was impressive, and then they dropped back into tyre degradation mode because at that point it was like, all right, let's try and lock up the 2-3. But then the safety car comes out just after a lot of the cars had pitted. Hamilton has had a tough time relative to Russell over the last year or so in safety car luck. This time he gets very much blessed and gets put into 3rd place with the VSC. The safety car comes through. He was on softs as well, and they put both Norris and Piastri on the hards. And I think everyone thought that Hamilton was going to get past Norris there at the restart and that McLaren had done a Ferrari strategy. But actually, the hard tyre might well have even been the correct choice had there been a few more laps. Even Red Bull said that like 5 more laps at the end of that race, Norris would have probably got Max, because at the end of the race, I mean, Piastri was getting Hamilton. 1 more lap and Piastri probably gets Hamilton. He was like a second off Hamilton in the end, and Norris was closing in on Max actually. So the hard tyre might have been the correct choice there, but it took a special driver in Norris to defend from Hamilton the way that he did. Just a very entertaining race on the whole. Hamilton gets his incredibly 14th podium at Silverstone. Look at this, since 2014 he's been on the podium every single year, and in 2020 he was on it twice, right, because they had the British Grand Prix and the 70th anniversary Grand Prix. Russell gets 5th. Piastri had the pace to get 3rd here, and it's incredible that Piastri, in his first weekends in a car that's capable of getting a podium with some upgrades on it, right, he sticks at P4 and arguably could have been 3rd. So very impressive rookie, and looking forward to the rest of his career. Albon and the Williams, got to mention quickly on Ferrari though, because they got caught out badly by the safety car. It was in part their own fault though. Like, they pitted Leclerc onto the hards on lap 19, and Russell did 29 or 28 laps on the softs. So I don't really know what Ferrari were thinking there, and they screwed themselves over. They went like, Leclerc went medium, hard, soft after the safety car. Another classic Ferrari shambles at Silverstone. And I will say, I took the mick out of this when Mika Hakkinen said this a couple of months ago now, when he mentioned that he reckons that McLaren are the team most likely to challenge Red Bull, and I thought he'd had too much of his medication. But apparently this guy was cooking, because this is the quote that he said a while ago: in terms of raw speeds, they will probably challenge Red Bull. So I don't know how he knew this was coming, but these upgrades have worked a charm for McLaren, and these were the numbers, right? Median race pace, Verstappen the fastest, the 2 McLarens roughly 3/10 behinds, then the 2 Mercedes roughly 5/10 behinds, then Perez fighting through traffic, then the Ferraris. So that was your order pretty much of the day. The Astons surprisingly nowhere really the last couple of weekends, and the season is great fun if Verstappen didn't exist, right? The Red Bull's the fastest car, Verstappen's driving just ridiculously well and insanely consistently, but the first lap of the Grand Prix has been led by plenty of different teams and drivers this year, and without Max and Red Bull, the season would be very entertaining. Every weekend there's a different best team, and now it's McLaren, which is making Hamilton think, hang on a second here, yes, they painted their car chrome, but how come McLaren have come from absolutely nowhere? Because the first race of the season, you guys remember, Piastri was just no pace. Norris was coming into the pits every few laps because he had some like hydraulic things that had to keep topping up his car with air. It was absolute shambles, nowhere near the points. And since then, they've been making steady progress. The big upgrades that Norris got in Austria made a big step, and now they've made an even further development here this weekend. And that's where Max Verstappen has been asked the question. This is a hilarious picture, to be honest, but he was asked the question before the weekends, who's the biggest threat to your dominance? And he just doesn't know. And I don't think he's lying here, right? I think he just doesn't know. It's not Perez, but, you know, is it meant to be Perez? Are the other teams good? Whereas Mercedes, right? Now, Red Bull are the best team, they're the best car, and they're going to move even further ahead. They're bringing more upgrades, is the scary thing. Max Verstappen confirmed this, that Hungary, the next race, they're going to bring further changes. So, you know, they're going to win a lot of races this year, if not every single race. But Mercedes will be thinking, hang on a second, how has this happened? If you're Mercedes, you're looking at Red Bull, and you're seeing them 3/10 clear of McLaren, and you're seeing them at times this season 3/10 clear of Aston as the second fastest team. Mercedes are the engine supplier to both McLaren and to Aston Martin and to Williams. All three of those teams have at some point this year been faster than the Mercedes, even recently in qualifying, right? Like Albon was looking rather good compared to the Mercedes. Now in the race that's not happened yet, but still, like, I mean, Hamilton's sitting there thinking this McLaren's a rocket ship, and there were so many parts of that McLaren car that were just better than the Mercedes this weekend. And that's a Mercedes with upgrades, apparently, right? They brought a new front wing. Didn't do much, as we'll see. But Hamilton, I mean, as he says here, it was not the greatest feeling, even though that he got a podium. Very lucky to get the podium, of course. Very hopeful of the step that we were going to try and make, but it's disappointing. It's a disappointment to see that it didn't take that step, the front wing, the new front wing that they brought. For us to be 6th and 7th in quali was probably better than they expected, actually, based on their performance in practice. Just ultimately want a great feeling, just knowing how hard everyone's worked and everyone was feeling in the team. So they've got more progress to make, but the McLaren was, okay, it was losing out to the Mercedes in the slower corners, which is a surprise, right? This Mercedes, they still, I don't think, understand it fully. I know that Toto Wolff said that they do since the new upgrades. But at the start of the season, especially, let's say, Spain, right? They brought the upgrade package in Monaco. They go to Spain. They're great in the high-speed corners. They're competitive with Red Bull in the high-speed corners. In the lower-speed corners, that's where they're lost at Spain. So going to Silverstone, the thought was, okay, well, they might lose in the slower speeds, but they'll be great at the high speeds. But this weekend, they were great in the slow speeds. They were as quick as Red Bull in all the slow speed corners, but they lost in the straights marginally, and they also lost in the high speeds, which is where they thought they were good. And McLaren was destroying the Mercedes. I think even Hamilton went as far to use the word murdering in the higher speed corners. Maggots, Beckett's, Chapel, the McLaren was way faster than the Mercedes, and that was not what they were expecting at all. So while Hamilton might have gained in, you know, the loop and farm and these corners earlier on in the lap, and Brooklands and Luffields, in Maggots, Beckett's, Chapel, Stowe, like, they were losing so much time, and that was a surprise, I'm sure, to Mercedes. And this is what Toto Wolff says. He's like, this car again is not really more predictable. It's the Diva 2.0. They call last year's car a Diva. Seems like the same thing again they're experiencing. And I mean, Toto Wolff's like, look, I thought this was our best chance of a win this season because Silverstone has typically suited their car very well. But without a bit of luck with the safety car, they wouldn't have even had a podium. And he says, yeah, this track was our dominant and strong track. And the high speed, though, this weekend was not good at all compared to our direct competitors. And even in qualifying, struggling with traction. So lots of things they've got to look at. And obviously Norris was also running lower downforce. He talked about this after the race, that he decided compared to Piastri to run a bit less downforce. So in a race situation such as, you know, trying to outdrag Hamilton down into copse, he could do it as he did, but still had better performance in the high speed corners with less downforce. So this is where Mercedes are thinking, all right, how do we resolve this? Because they've looked at the McLaren, and as Lewis Hamilton says, if you look at the McLaren as he did earlier on, we saw the image alongside a Red Bull, it looks very similar. They've made some changes. They've clearly taken inspiration from Red Bull as expected. Toto Wolff says they're going to leave no stone unturned because the McLaren found pretty much a whole second. Over the last, let's say, 5-6 races, they've gone from being over a second slower than the Red Bull at times to being within a few tenths. Now, Norris says, oh no, it doesn't look like a Red Bull, guys. It looks like an Aston. But obviously the Aston looks a bit like a Red Bull as well. So this is what Mercedes have to realise, and they probably should have realised this quite a long time ago, but their car needs to conform more to the Red Bull direction, because theoretically, if McLaren can be within 3/10 of the Red Bull, and if Aston Martin on a good track for them can be within 2-3 of the Red Bull, which it was, let's say, in Canada, Mercedes should be, as the dominant supplying team, a further 2-3 tenths up the road, and they should be right there with Red Bull, but they're not. And this is, you know, one of the key storylines I think that comes out of this is like it's just another dagger to Mercedes that McLaren are now all of a sudden outperforming them. So I mean, yeah, and even they talked about the hard tyres, the fact that they were able to get that hard tyre going relatively quickly. Okay, it took a couple of laps and some great defense from Norris, but even if Hamilton had got through, I think Norris would have got him back in a few laps time, because the car was just straight up quicker, and once the hard tyres were up and running, it was that was the key development of the weekends. But Hamilton says, look, they now know exactly what they need to do. He says, we know what we've got to do, we've got some serious conversations we've got to have on what we're planning to do moving forwards, but I think they've probably seen what McLaren have done and realised that's the direction in which they need to move to gain a substantial period of time. And it's true that behind Verstappen and the Red Bull, the regulations are very competitive. Like between P2 and P9 in quali, there's only a couple of tenths. Albon's up there in quali, Aston Martin, McLaren, Mercedes, Ferrari are all there. And okay, Perez has had a bit of a stinker lately, but still Verstappen and the Red Bull are the fastest package combination. But it's very exciting behind that in a kind of rare set of circumstances. One quick thing to mention before we close out on Ricciardo, because Nick de Vries has apparently been... It's a done deal, right? He's not going to be driving in Zandvoort. Kind of a shame. His home race he won't be there for, probably, if he gets dropped mid-season, and apparently he will be. Now, Daniel Ricciardo might be the leading candidate. There's been talks about even Alex Palou from IndyCar getting signed, but I don't think that will be happening mid-season. So, also Liam Lawson is the man they've put to Super Formula in Japan, but there's rumours that Liam Lawson has... Yeah, he's impressed them with his pace, but maybe from like a team perspective, they're not so convinced. So Ricciardo could be the guy if he impresses at, I believe it's tomorrow's Pirelli tyre test he's doing with Red Bull in the RB19. If he does well there, Ricciardo could well be the man to replace Nick de Vries from Zandvoort and beyond after the summer break. So very much intrigued to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.